Right, so are you ready to get up into another deep dive with us?
Always.
Awesome. Well, today we're going to be talking about The Fall Risk. It's a new novella by Abby Jimenez.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of this one?
I
So
have.
this is one that is kind of being marketed towards rom-com fans, and it's supposed to have like a little quirky humor to it.
Mm-hmm.
But, a lot of people are busy these days, and it's only 82 pages, so we're going to figure out, is it even worth your time for something that short?
Yeah, you know what I can tell you right away is that if you're looking for like a quick feel-good, read something light,
Yeah.
a little bit of romance, a little bit of humor, The Fall Risk definitely delivers.
That does sound promising, but I have to admit, I'm already getting a little bit skeptical.
Oh, yeah.
Can a novella in 82 pages really be that good? Can it really deliver a satisfying story and character development?
I think that's a fair question.
Yeah,
A lot of us, I think, have been burned by novellas in the past, where they feel rushed or incomplete.
right.
But I think Abby Jimenez really pulls it off in this one. She manages to create well-rounded characters in a story that feels complete and satisfying in just those 82 pages.
Okay.
Trust me on that.
So tell me a little bit more about this story. What is it about?
Okay, so imagine this. It's Valentine's Day weekend.
Oh, fun.
You're in your apartment.
Okay.
Everything seems normal, but then all of a sudden the stairs to your front door disappear.
Wait, what? The stairs just disappear?
They're gone, demolished by mistake,
Oh, no.
and you are stuck.
On Valentine's Day weekend?
On Valentine's Day weekend, up in your second floor apartment with your neighbor.
Oh, my goodness.
That's where all the fun begins. So our main characters are Charlotte and Seth, and they are forced into this very unexpected situation.
Right.
And they are not exactly looking for romance because Charlotte's dealing with a stalker and Seth is freshly divorced.
Okay. I am intrigued now. That is not your typical Valentine's Day scenario.
Definitely not.
So we've got the forced proximity, we've got some interesting characters, it sounds like, and Abby Jimenez is known for tackling these serious topics with humor. So how does she bring all of that together in this novella?
You know what? She does such an amazing job of balancing the lightheartedness with the real life issues. There is a lot of humor in this one, and there's one part where Seth, he's trying to come up with like a rapper name to impress Charlotte, and he lands on Swim Shady.
Oh my God.
And I dare you not to laugh at that.
Swim Shady. That's pretty good.
I know, it's pretty funny.
But how does she handle the heavier, Charlotte's stalker situation? Does that bring the mood down in such a short story?
It's definitely there. She doesn't shy away from it.
Okay.
She approaches it with sensitivity. It's not like played for laughs or anything like that.
Right.
But it's not overwhelming either. She acknowledges the seriousness of it while still keeping the overall tone light and romantic.
Yeah.
It's a very delicate balance, but I think she pulls it off.
All right, so you've sold me on the tone. I think you've mentioned the humor, the very unique premise, and how she handles these more sensitive topics. But for someone who maybe has read her other books, like Just for the Summer, should they expect the same kind of experience from this novella?
Well, Just for the Summer is a full-length novel, so obviously there's a lot more room for like elaborate plot lines, character development, things like that.
Right.
The Fall Risk is much shorter, but I do think it captures that same Abby Jimenez magic.
Okay.
You've got witty banter, relatable characters, and heartwarming moments, and it's all just condensed into this nice, delightful, quick read.
So it's like a concentrated dose of Abby Jimenez charm.
Exactly. And don't forget, this novella is going to be available for free on Amazon Prime Reading starting March 1st.
Okay. Free is always a good selling point.
Right. Especially if you're on the fence, there's no risk involved.
I love that. All right, so I think we've covered a lot of ground here, but for those listeners out there who are still wondering, is The Fall Risk worth my time? What would you say is the main draw? What kind of reader is really going to love this book?
If you're looking for like a lighthearted escape and you are some characters that feel real and a relationship that develops organically, I think The Fall Risk is definitely something you should check out.
Okay, I could see that. But, you mentioned characters that feel real, so with such a short format, how does Jimenez make Charlotte and Seth stand out from, just your typical rom-com couple?
What's interesting about Charlotte and Seth is they both come into this situation with some baggage.
Right.
Charlotte's dealing with the stalker. Seth is, recently divorced. So
Yeah.
they're not just looking for love. They're dealing with some real life issues. And I think that vulnerability just makes them so relatable.
Right, because everybody's been there at some point where they felt vulnerable or,
Exactly.
like they had some baggage.
Yeah. And I think that just makes them more endearing in a way,
Yeah.
because they're not perfect.
Yeah, I like that. So I am curious about the humor, though. Is it all just lighthearted banter, or are there kind of some deeper layers to it?
Jimenez's humor is definitely multi-layered. You've got the surface level wit and those funny situations like the swim shady thing.
Yeah.
But she's also just a clever writer.
Okay.
Like her writing style is clever and it shines through, she uses humor to kind of diffuse tension sometimes and to highlight the characters' personalities. Like
Yeah.
there's this one part where um Seth is trying to be all chivalrous and
Okay.
offers Charlotte his coat, but
Mhm.
his coat is covered in sawdust because he's an arborist.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
I know, right? It's funny, but it also kind of tells you something about him.
Yeah, it does. It kind of
Yeah.
builds that character a little bit more for you.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so it's sweet, even when it's, like you said, poking fun at them a little bit. I like that. But we haven't really talked about the romance itself. Is it insta-love? Or is there a believable progression to their relationship?
Given that this is a novella, it is a little bit of a whirlwind romance.
Okay.
But it's not just, throwing them together and saying, okay, now you're in love.
Right.
Their connection really does grow out of this shared experience that they have, the forced proximity and the way that they end up supporting each other through all these challenges.
It is interesting how you mentioned that shared experience. I think that elevates the story a little bit beyond just your typical trapped together trope, because they're not just randomly thrown together. They're forced to rely on each other because of this very specific, unusual circumstance.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you said, it's the vulnerability there that creates this bond.
Right. And that demolished staircase, it's not just a plot device.
Yeah.
It's really like a catalyst for them to connect on a deeper level. It forces them to kind of confront their fears and insecurities and to realize they're not alone in all of this.
Yeah.
And that's where the romance really blossoms.
I love that. Okay, so you've convinced me that there's more to this novella than meets the eye. But I do want to address the elephant in the room.
Oh, yeah.
Some readers found it a little bit predictable. What would you say to that?
I mean, it's true that The Fall Risk doesn't necessarily reinvent the rom-com.
Okay.
It uses some tropes that we've seen before.
Right.
But I don't think it's trying to be groundbreaking. It's taking these familiar elements and giving them heart and humor
Yeah.
and characters that you can really connect with. And I think that's what makes it work.
So it's the execution that really matters.
Exactly. And I think that's what Abby Jimenez does really well. Plus, you've got those little cameos from characters
Oh, yeah.
in some of her other books, which is kind of fun.
Right. Especially if you're already a fan.
Yeah.
What really resonates with me, though, is that this story, despite the quirky premise and the lighthearted tone, really explores something a little deeper.
Yeah.
Like how we find connection,
Right.
even when surrounded by chaos.
Absolutely. I think The Fall Risk reminds us that vulnerability can be a strength
Mm-hmm.
and that sometimes those really meaningful connections happen when we least expect them.
It really does make you think, could a weekend trapped with a stranger lead to love?
Well, I think in real life, things are never quite as simple as they are in fiction.
Of course, yeah.
But the core message of the book, I think, does resonate.
Yeah.
The idea that connection and healing can come from these unexpected sources.
Yeah.
Especially when we're feeling vulnerable and guarded. And, who knows, maybe there is a little bit of magic in those unexpected encounters.
Oh,
A little spark of possibility that can just kind of ignite in those chaotic moments.
I love that. So for our listeners who are still on the fence, what is the final verdict? Would you recommend The Fall Risk?
If you're looking for a feel-good read and you want something with a little bit of depth and a touch of sweetness and a whole lot of charm, I think The Fall Risk is definitely worth checking out.
Awesome. And with the free availability on Amazon Prime Reading starting March 1st, I don't see why you wouldn't.
Yeah.
It's funny, we started this deep dive wondering if a novella could really, deliver a satisfying reading experience. And I think The Fall Risk has proven that sometimes less can be more.
Oh, absolutely. I think The Fall Risk really demonstrates that you don't have to sacrifice depth or character development just because you have a shorter format.
Right. And in fact, I think maybe the novella length enhances those elements.
Yeah.
Because it allows Jimenez to focus on a specific event, this crazy Valentine's Day weekend. And it creates this sense of intimacy and allows us to really delve into those characters' emotions and their evolving relationship. It's like we're right there with them.
Right, we are.
Experiencing the awkward encounters and the laughs and the vulnerability.
That's such a great point. And, the novella format really allows that laser focus on a particular moment in time.
Yeah.
And for Charlotte and Seth, this is a moment of transformation. They come into this weekend carrying these burdens, and through that forced proximity and their shared experience, they actually find healing and connection.
And it's not just about, romantic connection.
No.
It's about finding strength in unexpected places, learning to trust again, And realizing that even when life throws you a curveball or demolishes your staircase,
Right.
there's always hope for something beautiful to come out of it.
The fall risk reminds us that we're not meant to go through those challenges alone. And sometimes, the most unlikely encounters can lead to those really profound connections and help us heal and grow and ultimately rediscover the joy in those unexpected detours.
It really makes you wonder, could a weekend trapped with a stranger really lead to love? Or is that just a rom-com fantasy?
I mean, I think there's truth in both. Obviously, real life is rarely as neat and tidy as fiction.
Right.
But the core message of the fall risk really resonates, that idea that connection and healing can come from these unexpected sources, especially when we're feeling vulnerable and guarded. And who knows, maybe there is a little magic in those unexpected encounters, a little spark of possibility that can ignite even in the most chaotic of circumstances.
I love that. Okay, so final takeaway for our listeners. The Fall Risk is more than just a light and fluffy rom-com. It's a story about resilience, the power of human connection, and finding hope and healing in unexpected places.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that sometimes life's greatest gifts come disguised as detours, as demolished staircases, as forced proximity with a stranger who just might turn out to be exactly who you need.
Well said. And with those charming characters, witty banter, and heartwarming moments, The Fall Risk is a delightful escape that will leave you smiling and optimistic about the possibilities in everyday life.
And don't forget, you can dive into this heartwarming story for free on Amazon Prime Reading starting March 1st.
So there you have it, folks, a deep dive into Abby Jimenez's The Fall Risk. We hope this has helped you decide if this charming novella deserves a spot on your reading list. Until next time, keep exploring those literary landscapes, and remember, sometimes the most rewarding journeys are the ones we least expect.